Hey guys, tonight we're gonna talk about a spring festival in ancient Japan. You wake in a world long ago. The winter has passed and spring has returned. The snow has melted from rooftops. Rivers run freely again, and the first blossoms of cherry trees have opened. It is the morning of a festival. Not a festival of noise and chaos, but one of calm, of gathering, and of blossoms that last only for a short time. Today, you will see what it was like to join a spring festival in ancient Japan. Morning preparations. Inside a small wooden house, light slips through paper screens. A mother prepares a basket of food. Rice balls wrapped in seaweed, pickled plums, grilled fish, and sweet cakes of mochi. The scent of steaming rice fills the room. A child tugs at her sleeve, eager to leave, but she smiles and shakes her head. "Patience," she whispers. His father rolls a straw mat to carry. The family bows to their neighbours as they step outside. All along the street, other families are doing the same. Baskets in hand, laughter soft and gentle. The narrow path soon becomes a small river of people, flowing toward the same destination. The cherry blossoms by the riverbank. The walk to the festival grounds. The air is cool, but no longer winter cold. The ground is damp from melted snow, carrying the scent of earth waking again. Children run ahead, their footsteps light, their voices full of joy. One little girl bends to pluck a tiny wildflower. She places it carefully in her mother's hair, who smiles quietly, too shy to speak, but full of warmth. And then, at last, the blossoms appear. Rows of trees, their branches heavy with petals of pale pink and white. The breeze stirs, and the petals drift down slowly, like gentle rain. The people fall silent for a moment, simply gazing at the sight. At last, the families reach the riverbank. The air is alive with fragrance, though gentle, never overwhelming. Blossoms drift from the branches like snowflakes, settling on shoulders, in hair, on the ground where they form a soft carpet. Mats are laid beneath the trees. The straw is rough beneath the fingers as it unrolls, but soon it becomes a place of comfort. Baskets are placed down with care. Shoes are removed at the edge of each mat. A small act of respect, a way to keep the space clean. Voices rise around you, though none are loud. Children laugh as they try to catch petals in their hands. Old men sit with brushes and scrolls, already writing poems inspired by the falling blossoms. Mothers smooth the mats, making sure there is space for everyone. The river moves slowly beside the gathering. Its surface reflects the branches above, so that it seems blossoms float on water as well as in air. When the breeze stirs, ripples carry the reflection downstream. It is as if the blossoms themselves are on a journey. Near the edge of the grove, an old man sits alone, a scroll unrolled before him. His brush is steady, his strokes deliberate. Children gather at a distance, whispering to one another, wondering what he is writing. At last, one child dares to approach. "Sensei," he asks softly, "what do you write?" The old man looks up, smiles faintly, and replies, "I write what the blossoms tell me. Blossoms fall so fast, yet my heart cannot follow. It stays beneath them." The children do not fully understand, but they feel the weight of the words. They bow politely and return to their games. But the old man smiles again, knowing that someday they will remember. The baskets are opened. All around, families begin to open their baskets. The air grows thick with new scents, food mixing with blossom. There are onigiri, rice balls, round and firm, some filled with salted fish, some with pickled plum. The seaweed that wraps them crackles slightly when bitten, releasing a faint aroma of the sea. There are skewers of grilled fish, their skins golden, their edges crisp. Even from a distance, you can smell the smoke of the fire that cooked them. Pickled vegetables appear in small lacquered boxes, bright with colour. Greens of cucumber, yellows of radish, reds of ginger. Each carefully arranged, not simply placed, for beauty was always part of the meal. And of course, mochi. Round, soft, dusted with rice flour, filled with sweet bean paste. Children wait eagerly for them, eyes shining with anticipation. Adults pour small cups of sake. The clear liquid glistens in the sunlight. It warms the body when sipped, but more than that, it warms the spirit, binding friends and families in quiet toasts. A moment of reflection. As the food is shared, conversations remain gentle. Voices never rise above the rustle of wind or the sound of water. There is no need. The blossoms themselves command quiet respect. This was not a festival of noise, but of awareness. To sit beneath blossoms that last only a week, sometimes less, was to feel the truth of life itself, that everything is fleeting, that beauty exists not in permanence, but in its passing. The people of ancient Japan called this mono no aware, the gentle sadness of impermanence, and the gratitude that comes with it. It was not sorrow, not despair, but a soft recognition that nothing can be held forever. And because of this, each moment becomes precious. Among the families sits a young man with a shamisen across his lap. The three-stringed instrument glows faintly in the light, its wooden body polished smooth from years of playing. At first, he does nothing, waiting until the laughter of children quiets, until the breeze slows. And then he begins to play. The notes are sharp, each pluck ringing clear, but they fade quickly, as if each sound too is a blossom, falling as soon as it appears. A bamboo flute joins him, played by another musician seated nearby. Together, they weave a melody that seems to belong to the trees themselves. A child runs to his mother, tugging at her sleeve. "Listen," he whispers, "the trees are singing." The mother smiles, because in truth, that is what it feels like. As the ancient instruments wove their slow, otherworldly song, another group emerged from behind the musicians. They were dancers of the imperial court, dressed in brilliant robes of crimson, emerald, and deep sapphire. The silk shimmered under the fading afternoon light, each movement sending ripples of colour through the air. Their faces were serene, almost solemn, as they stepped into formation. Some wore delicate masks, expressions carved in pale wood that seemed both human and divine. Others let their faces remain uncovered, their hair flowing long, adorned with simple blossoms. The music swelled, and the dancers began to move. Their steps were deliberate, their gestures measured, as though each motion carried centuries of meaning. Sleeves of silk stretched wide like the wings of cranes, then folded inward again, as if embracing the earth. Fans painted with gold and ink flickered open, catching the last rays of sunlight, then closed with a gentle snap. The children who had been playing moments before fell silent, entranced by the sight. Adults bowed their heads, for the dance was not merely performance, it was ritual. In every sweep of the hand, in every tilt of the head, there was a prayer. For good harvests, for protection against illness, for the harmony of heaven and earth. The music slowed, and one dancer stepped forward. Her robes were layered in shades of soft pink, echoing the cherry blossoms themselves. She moved alone, a solitary figure beneath the drifting petals. Her fan rose slowly to the sky, then lowered as though offering the blossoms back to the ground. Each gesture was delicate, yet powerful, speaking of beauty that blooms only for a moment before it fades. Gasps whispered through the crowd. Some in the audience felt tears prick their eyes, though they could not say why. The dance seemed to touch something deep within, the recognition that life, like the blossoms, is fleeting, and that this very impermanence is its truest beauty. At last, the dancers retreated, their silken robes swaying like waves on a quiet shore. The musicians let the final notes fade into the evening air. For a long time, no one moved. Only the petals continued to fall, settling softly onto mats, robes, and hair, as though the trees themselves had joined in the ritual. When the last notes of the dance faded into silence, the mood of the festival slowly shifted. The solemn reverence of ritual gave way once more to the easy laughter of families gathered beneath the trees. Children, who had been holding their breath during the performance, now burst into movement again, as if the spell of the sacred music had lifted. They began small games, chasing one another around the trunks of the cherry trees, or gathering petals into piles and tossing them into the air like drifting snow. Nearby, young adults gathered with slips of paper. Each bore fragments of poetry, lines of waka written in elegant brushstrokes. They arranged themselves beside a narrow stream that wound through the garden. Cups of sake were placed on the water, drifting slowly with the current. The challenge was simple. Before the cup reached the end of the stream, the player had to recite a verse of poetry, improvised if possible, or drawn from memory if not. Failure meant laughter, gentle teasing, and sometimes a sip of sake as a forfeit. Elders looked on with knowing smiles. They remembered the same games played in their youth, though the verses and fashions had long since changed. A grey-haired man recited lines of an old poem, his voice steady, and for a moment, time seemed to fold in on itself, the past and the present coexisting under the falling blossoms. Not all the amusements were quiet. A small space was cleared for a mock contest of archery. Bows of bamboo were strung, and padded arrows tipped with cloth were fired toward a straw target. Cheers rose with each near miss. Laughter rang out at each wild shot, and the children clapped and squealed with delight. The grove filled again with noise and joy. After the solemn beauty of dance and prayer, the festival had returned to the playful heart of springtime, where music, laughter, and the fleeting blossoms belonged to everyone, young and old alike. As the laughter of games began to settle, a hush spread across the grove once more. From the far edge of the garden came the sound of conch shells and slow, steady drums. All eyes turned toward the entrance, where a new procession was approaching. It was a group of courtiers, men and women of noble rank, dressed in the full splendor of the Heian court. Their garments were unlike anything worn by the common families gathered on the mats. The women appeared first. Their robes layered 12-fold in shades of scarlet, indigo, and soft green. Each movement revealed a hidden layer beneath, as though the blossoms themselves had been woven into silk. The men followed, clad in tall black caps and long trailing robes of deep color. At their center walked priests of the Shinto shrines, bearing sacred branches of evergreen, tied with strips of white paper. Behind them came attendants, carrying lacquered boxes and trays with offerings: rice, salt, fresh fish, and folded cloth. The crowd parted in silence, bowing as the nobles and priests passed. Children were hushed by their parents, sensing the weight of ceremony. The procession moved slowly to a small altar prepared beneath the largest cherry tree. There, the priests began their chants. Their voices rose in rhythmic tones, invoking the kami, the divine spirits, to bless the land with rain, to guard against storms, to grant peace and fertility in the season ahead. The nobles knelt gracefully, their sleeves trailing across the grass, while attendants placed the offerings upon the altar. For a long moment, the grove was filled only with the drone of chant and the flutter of paper streamers tied to sacred wands. The blossoms continued to fall, as if the trees themselves were listening. When the prayers concluded, the lead priest lifted the evergreen branch high, then bowed 3 times to the gathered families. The nobles echoed the gesture, and the crowd, still silent, returned the bow. A wave of reverence rippled outward, binding commoner and aristocrat, priest and child, beneath the same falling petals. Only after the procession withdrew did the murmurs of conversation return, soft and hesitant at first, like waking from a dream. The solemn presence of the court had left its mark. The festival was not only a time of laughter, but also a time of prayer and harmony, linking heaven and earth beneath the cherry blossoms. As twilight deepened, the energy of the festival shifted once more. After the solemn procession of nobles and priests, the grove seemed ready to breathe again. Laughter returned in gentle ripples, and groups began to gather by the narrow stream that wound its way through the garden. This was the moment many had been waiting for: the poetry contests. In the Heian world, poetry was not a pastime for scholars alone. It was a shared language, a measure of elegance, wit, and elegant practice, and even love. A row of cups filled with sake was set upon the water, each drifting slowly along the current. The challenge was simple. Before the cup reached the bend of the stream, a poet had to compose a verse of waka, 31 syllables of fleeting beauty, inspired by blossoms, by the season, or perhaps by the face of a companion across the water. One young man stepped forward. He knelt beside the stream, watching the petals swirl upon the surface. As the cup floated near, he spoke in a voice soft yet clear. His verse likened the blossoms to the brevity of a dream, vanishing as soon as one tries to hold it. The crowd murmured in appreciation, some nodding, others smiling at the graceful choice of words. Next came a young woman, her sleeves trailing upon the grass. She glanced at the drifting sake, then at the man who had just spoken. Her verse answered his, comparing the blossoms not to a dream, but to a fleeting encounter of hearts, sweet, beautiful, and gone too soon. Laughter and applause followed, not mocking, but delighted, for the verses seemed to weave together like strands of silk. Children tried their own verses, short and clumsy, but no less sincere. Their poems spoke of chasing butterflies, of sweet rice cakes, of the petals falling into their hair. Parents clapped and cheered, proud of their small poets. An elder then raised his voice, reciting a verse remembered from long ago. His words carried the weight of years, reminding the crowd that blossoms had fallen just the same in the time of emperors past, and would continue to fall long after they themselves were gone. The silence that followed was tinged with awe. As the stream carried the cups away, and as verse answered verse, the garden seemed to breathe with poetry. Under the drifting blossoms, people were not only celebrating spring, they were sharing their souls in syllables, stitching fleeting moments into words that might outlast the petals themselves. As the sun sank low, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and rose, the festival shifted again. The playful energy of children and poetry gradually gave way to a quieter, more contemplative mood. Lanterns of paper and silk were brought out, delicate frames carrying flickering flames, and were hung among the cherry trees. Families settled once more on their mats, the scent of evening mingling with the faint fragrance of petals. The last rays of sunlight caught the blossoms, turning them a gentle shade of gold, as if the trees themselves were bidding farewell to the day. Soft music returned, slower now, echoing the rhythm of the descending night. The dancers from earlier reappeared, moving in pairs or alone, their movements more fluid and meditative than before. Their fans opened and closed with a gentle whisper, their sleeves brushing the fallen petals. Each gesture seemed to capture the fleeting beauty of the day, a final homage to the blossoms before they vanished with the night. Children, weary from hours of play and poetry, rested against their parents, some dozing with small smiles on their faces. Adults spoke in hushed tones, sharing memories, reflecting on the fleeting nature of life and marveling at the harmony of the garden under the soft glow of lanterns. As darkness deepened, more lanterns were lit along the pathways, casting a warm, golden light across the petals and water. The reflections in the stream danced like stars fallen from the sky. Families watched in quiet wonder, hearts full of awe and serenity. The festival, which had begun with laughter and bustle, now held a stillness that felt sacred. The interplay of music, poetry, dancing, and light created a world suspended between reality and dream, a space where the fleeting beauty of spring could be felt in every breath and every falling blossom. As the festival drew to a close, families began to gather their belongings. Mats were rolled up, bento boxes packed away, and the last lanterns were gently extinguished. The garden, now almost empty, seemed to hold its breath, as if savouring the final echoes of the day. Children, their eyes heavy with sleep, were lifted into the arms of parents or carried in small wooden carts. Some whispered soft goodbyes to friends made among petals and poetry. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blossoms and the distant city lights shimmering across the river. Walking through the quiet streets of Kyoto, the families moved slowly. Each step seemed measured, as if reluctant to leave the magic of the garden behind. Occasionally, a child's soft giggle broke the stillness, followed by hushed laughter from parents. Lanterns from other homes glowed faintly in windows, echoing the fading festival lights. Arriving home, doors were slid open to welcome them into warm wooden houses. The day's meals were shared once more in quiet, familiar spaces. Children, still drowsy, fell asleep with faint smiles, their heads resting against cushions or in a parent's lap. Parents lingered a moment by windows, gazing at the dark silhouettes of cherry trees outlined against the night sky. Petals continued to fall silently, as if carrying the memory of the day into the hours of darkness. Finally, the lamps were extinguished, and the house settled into calm. The festival had passed, but its spirit lingered in the hearts of children who dreamed of blossoms, in the memories of adults who had witnessed both laughter and solemn beauty, and in the gentle whisper of the wind through the empty branches. The fleeting magic of the spring day had become a memory, quiet yet eternal, waiting to return with the next season.